2023 Day at the Capitol. We are so excited to be back in person in the Capitol Rotunda this year and meeting with legislators in their office in St. Paul. We are happy that you are able to join us on Tuesday, March 28th, and we just want to take a little bit to give you some background of some of the legislative priorities that we're going to be advocating for and some important messages to be bringing forward to your elected officials. So why are we putting this video together? Well, we have a lot of legislative priorities that we're advocating for. We wanted to make sure that you are as informed as possible so you feel comfortable when you're talking to your legislator. Last year, we know that the legislative session ended with a disappointing finish, and so there's lots of pent-up things that we are trying to accomplish this year as we kind of go into the 2023 legislative session, knowing that it's a budget year and knowing that the state has a large budget surplus. So what are we advocating for? Well, the first and most important item on our legislative agenda is long-term sustainable rate adjustments, both within the DWRS, the Disability Waiver Rate System, and for our ICF services. So first, with the Best Life Alliance and the DWS legislation, that is House File 999, Senate File 1015. That legislation will make sustainable, ongoing investments in the waiver rate system in order to provide us resources to increase our direct support professional staff wages. We know that we have a dire workforce shortage right now, and the only way that we can start making inroads is by increasing the wages of our staff. And by doing that, we are able to bring the dedicated professionals back into our service system. The DWS Bill does a few things, and it gets a little in the weeds. And so when you're talking to your legislator, you certainly do not have to feel like you need to talk about all of the specifics of the bill. But a couple important things to note that the bill does. One, it will increase the competitive workforce factor, which was something the legislature put in place a few years ago in order to specifically impact wages of our direct support professionals. However, when it was put in place in 2019, it was put in place as a stagnant rate and it has not been updated. And we are advocating to increase that competitive workforce factor to bring our wages closer to similar occupations with similar work and training experience. We also want to be basing our regular rate adjustments that happen every couple years within the system on current data. Right now, those rate adjustments are based on data that is about 4 years old. And so as we're looking on how we can be responding and keeping up with current economic conditions, we need our rates to be based on data from right now as opposed to 4 years ago. The other bill that makes long-term sustainable investments in rates is our ICF legislation. ICFs are funded obviously in a different way than waiver services. And so we need to come in with a separate piece of legislation to increase those rates as well. Our legislation this year would propose to increase all ICF rates by $50 a day, and then also create a new rate floor for ICF services, which would be $300 a day for Class A services and $400 a day for Class B services. So first, the ICF rate would be increased by $50, and then if your ICF rate is still below that new rate floor, you would then be brought up to that floor. This way we can ensure that everyone is getting a much needed adjustment, and those ICF services that have historically very, very low rates will have another bump to try to bring those in alignment with the other services across the state. Finally, I wanted to make sure that folks knew about our workforce grant legislation, which proposes using some of the one-time funding within the budget surplus to provide up to $1,000 recruitment or retention bonus for direct support professionals across the state. We are requesting $43 million, as we estimate right now we have about 30,000 DSPs in the state and about a 30% vacancy rate. So for us to have a full workforce, we estimate that we would need about 43,000 direct support professionals. So we're requesting those dollars, again, to provide for a one-time recruitment or retention bonus of $1,000 for every direct support professional in the state. We also, within that same piece of legislation, are requesting a $4 million appropriation for DEED to launch a broad, statewide public awareness campaign to bring attention not only to the disability services professionals, but also to those staff that work in nursing homes or hospitals, and try to make sure that people across the state are aware that these jobs exist, how rewarding they are, and how important it is that they consider being a direct support professional when looking at what their next job might be. So that's a lot of detail on some of our top workforce priorities this session. What should you expect when you're meeting with your legislator? Well, first, I want to say you do not need to know all the details of the legislation. Your legislators want to hear from you. They want your personal story, and you know your personal story better than anyone else. If you're a staff person, talk about how hard it is to make ends meet on the wages you currently have. Talk about what it's like when coworkers leave, when you have to pick up extra shifts. Talk about the impact that you see on the people that you support and how the constant turnover in staff is impacting those individuals. Those stories matter, and those are what legislators will remember when they're making those final budget decisions. They hear from me every day. They hear from other lobbyists that are working on your behalf about the details of the legislation. But it's you and your personal story that really help us push this through the finish line. So when you're meeting with your legislator, make sure you introduce yourself, where you live, what you do, and have a clear ask. Say, I am here because I live in your district, I work in your district, and I need your support to invest in the disability waiver rate system or to invest in the ICF rate adjustments to increase wages for direct support professionals. We need their help in order to do that. Our rates are set by the legislature, and we need their support in order to make these long-term investments a reality.